All right, welcome to our friends in EMEA, APAC, the Americas, and beyond. So if you are in the US or you just need that extra boost, I hope you have enjoyed your morning coffee because it's National Coffee Day. So cheers to that. We're really looking forward to this webinar today to talk about all things recovery and especially showing you some real life examples from what we're seeing from our customers, other amazing folks in travel, and especially Discover Puerto Rico, who we have here today, and all the awesome things they're doing to put recovery strategies together. So if you're hearing conversations lately about social justice, climate change, measurement strategies shifting in COVID and continuing to in that post-COVID world, you are not alone, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So if you're new here, I'm Christy Jobman. I'm a marketing manager, and I'm joining you from Dallas, Texas, and Noreen is joining us from Dallas as well. The reason I point that out that we're so excited about is that we have been attending a live conference here in Dallas this week. That's right, live, masked, and vaccinated. So that's yet another positive sign that travelers and travel marketers alike are getting back out there and we're learning and connecting live. So great news. While we can all agree that leisure travel is reigning right now, that's a sign that business travel is certainly coming back. So with that, on today's agenda, we're going to take a look at Discover Puerto Rico's recovery trends during the pandemic. We're going to hear all about some of the awesome things they did in their campaigns to encourage visitors to safely come and see them. P.S. After everything Liz just told me, I wish that we were doing our webinar live from a beach somewhere in Puerto Rico, but unfortunately we're not, so that is another story. Now, the really amazing thing about our expert from Discover Puerto Rico, Liz, is that she was also one of the experts that we interviewed for the big report that we're showcasing today. So there is no better person to learn from. Now, that report is called 6 Digital Advertising Trends to Accelerate Travel's COVID-19 Recovery, and we partnered on that with Skift to do all the research and to activate it, and that is what Noreen is going to walk us through today. So she's really going to make a big point in having these trends be actionable tips for you to walk away with, and then those real life examples that I mentioned. And finally, the exciting thing is that we actually activated this massive webinar series all the way back in April of 2020, as so many others did, to get more digital when the pandemic kicked off. So we're really thrilled today to be talking to you in the scope of a recovery lens that we hope is soon to come for all. So the last thing I want to do before I send it over to our presenters is give us a little bit of a run through of what Sojern does, if anybody's new here. So really at our core, if you're a travel brand, our company exists to support you. So we do that by helping travelers, marketers move travelers from their dream to their destination. So by that, I mean through our thousands of global data partnerships that we get access to real-time search and booking signals. So to kind of make this experience more real for you, picture the last time that you booked a flight, but you didn't book your hotel room yet. You receive an ad shortly thereafter for a hotel or even something to do in the destination that you booked your flight to. Well, Sojern can be behind that because we help activate those ads on behalf of travel marketers that are in hotel, destination, attraction, and airline space. And we're helping to advertise to the right travelers at the right time with the right message to get them obviously visiting you and booking with you. So speaking of destinations, we have absolutely loved partnering with Discover Puerto Rico to help them activate their super creative messaging and get new visitors to their lovely island. So I'm going to pass it over to Liz to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever in the world you are today. My name is Liz Mabe, and I am the Digital Marketing Director for Discover Puerto Rico. I have been with the organization since its inception over 3 years ago. I oversee all of our digital properties as well as all of our advertising campaigns. I have spent my entire career working in the travel and tourism industry, so I'm familiar probably with a lot of you, so it's nice to see some of you again. I'm super excited to be here with you today on one of my favorite days of the year because it also happens to be my son's 10th birthday today, but excited to share some tips and tricks and things we've learned along the way and answer some questions at the end.
Awesome. All right, Noreen, over to you.
Excellent, and thanks, Liz. We are super excited to have you join us today. So for those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Noreen Henry. I am the Chief Revenue Officer here at Sojern. I have been in the travel industry for over 25 years, And I have what I think is the best job in the company. So I get to manage all of the teams that support and interact with all of you, our advertising partners. So, and we appreciate your business, and we're excited to have you join us today. All righty, Christy, back to you.
Love it. Two awesome women in travel with plenty of experience. So before I send it over to Liz to present on Puerto Rico's story from then to now, if you have questions for us, as always, just submit them throughout the presentation in that webinar control panel. We've already received a ton in our pre-registrations that we're excited to tackle, but keep those live ones coming. And of course, if you miss anything, we will send this webinar out afterwards, and you can find our full series on the website. With that, Liz, let's hear about Puerto Rico.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy, and thank you to the Sojern team for inviting us here today to share a little bit about Discover Puerto Rico. So before we dive in, we're going to take a look back at where we've been, what our approach has been, and then finally share a little bit of a sneak peek with how the island is doing now. So for those of you that may not know, Puerto Rico is no stranger to crisis. From Zika to hurricanes to political unrest and earthquakes, all of which led up to COVID-19. 2019 was our benchmark year and our comeback story, and we were on pace for a really solid 2020, even after dealing with earthquake impacts. But like everyone, COVID-19 hit us hard. Looking at this chart here at the onset of COVID-19, you can see the dramatic drop off that we experienced in demand. To show you, this chart is looking at the height of the pandemic, which is March 1st through April 11th of last year. So our impact was even greater than much of the mainland US, with our occupancy dipping below 5% at its worst, with the average US being at 22%. So we were hit pretty hard by this. To show you the scale of the impact, here's a look at the devastation of Hurricane Maria compared to the losses experienced due to COVID-19. So these numbers were actually calculated pretty early on. So I would imagine if we were to recalculate those numbers today, the losses would be even greater. But it should give you a lay of the land of the impact. For the island that was working really hard to recover, this was obviously felt very deeply. For us at Discover Puerto Rico, we knew we had to move aggressively and quickly to not lose all of the momentum and progress we had made over the last few years to rebuild the island's tourism economy. While many organizations went dark or paused their efforts, we chose to push forward. Ultimately, the first place that we started with was looking at our campaign messaging. So here's a look at a timeline of where we've been over the last few years with our campaigns. At the beginning of 2020, we had to pause our very short-lived brand campaign, which launched in 2019, Have We Met Yet, due to the earthquakes. We quickly repositioned messaging to Go for Puerto Rico, which had a strong call to action, an effort to save our high season post-earthquake impact. It's probably one of the shortest campaigns in the history of ever, as it ran for less than a month and was obviously paused with the onset of the pandemic. As we decided to move into shifting into our pandemic messaging, we wanted something that was going to be able to be flexible to align with whatever the current state of the world was at the time, as we knew that was quickly changing every day, and something that could align with consumer sentiment in sort of a phased approach. The first phase of that pandemic messaging launched in April of 2020, and that was our All in Good Time campaign. Obviously, the focus was to keep Puerto Rico top of mind and to remind travelers that we were there whenever they were able to travel again. As restrictions were loosened on the island, we transitioned to It's Time to Plan or It's Time to Book messaging, which is the current place that we still live with our creative messaging today. The It's Time campaign really has three main objectives: to drive awareness and keep Puerto Rico top of mind, to inspire our community during a time of uncertainty, and to incite immediate action from travelers and increase bookings on the island for future trips and visitation. This messaging was adapted for multiple audiences in addition to just our travelers, including travel agents and meetings and conferences. But not only did we look at our messaging and need to make updates to that, we also had to revisit our media targeting strategies, as the world is a very different place than it was pre-COVID. And we wanted to make sure that we were aligning with our goals and objectives. And this chart, while it's not pretty, it's effective. You can see the side by side of where we were with our targeting strategies pre-COVID, during COVID, and then our current media targeting strategies. Changes made during COVID included focusing on what we deemed as responsible travelers. These are the people that were more likely to follow the strict protocols and health and safety guidelines that we had in place on the island. This included things like adding on a layer of targeting for left-leaning political followers, as well as looking at previous purchase behavior for people that were buying hand sanitizers and masks, because we knew that they would take the protocols in place on the island seriously. We also created a formula to rank market selection. So pre-COVID, our market choices were just based off of air capacity, but during COVID, we wanted to look at not only air capacity, but vaccination rates as well as COVID cases. So this allowed us to optimize our markets that we were serving media with to remove any hotspot locations, which was really important during the height of the pandemic. We've now evolved our responsible traveler target to what we're calling the conscientious traveler. This is someone who prioritizes cultural sustainability, environmental impact, and wellness. We're continuing to look at the market ranking formula with those vaccination rates becoming more important as well, and continuing to track air capacity. If many of you have done that, tracking the air service to your destination, you've seen the massive fluctuations that the airlines have had. So super important to keep a good handle on that as well. So enough about where Puerto Rico has been and sort of what our approach has been. I'm sure the question on everyone's mind is, okay, well, did it actually work? What are your results? And the short answer is, it worked really well. Puerto Rico is outpacing our competitors. For the first time in June and July of this year, our RevPAR exceeded $200 for the first time ever. When we look at our benchmark year of 2019, of our competitors, we're one of the only ones that is seeing growth. So Puerto Rico is perfectly positioned for this opportunity post-COVID. I think next slide, please. There we go. Oh, and next slide. There we go. One of the biggest highlights has been the exponential growth that we have seen in our rental market as well. The growth in the rental market has outpaced the growth that we have seen in our hotels. We are within, our RevPAR being in line with our comp set. So really pleased to see the strength of our rental market that was really contributed a lot to the recovery in Puerto Rico. When looking at Puerto Rico compared to the rest of the mainland US, the island is leading recovery. Again, a lovely, pretty chart that is kind of hard to read, but I'll explain what's happening here. But essentially, this is looking at travel spending for all of the states in the US compared to 2019. Travel spending in Puerto Rico when compared to 2019 is up 34%, which is the highest of all of the states. While we've had a slight decrease in pace due to the rise of the Delta variant, we are still continuing to book ahead of 2019. We've had 6 straight months of record-breaking tax collections, and we're feeling really good about the progress that we've had on the island and look forward to continuing to push forward. And with that, thank you. I'll turn it over to Christy and Noreen.
Thank you so much. I knew about the earthquake. That's terrible, but to see all that you have been through the past few years, it's just amazing the work that your team has done. So we really appreciate you sharing all that. And we know that, again, you were a huge help in putting together these 6 advertising trends that Noreen's going to talk through to make some of the stuff that you just talked about really actionable for our listeners today. So I will send it over to Noreen.
All right, thanks, Christy, and thanks, Liz. Appreciate you sharing your recovery story. Really impressive and lots of great insights for people to take away. Okay, so to further our discussion, I'm going to build off of Liz's presentation and talk through these 6 distinct digital marketing trends that we are seeing successful travel marketers like Visit Puerto Rico use to accelerate their recovery. And I'll share some tips on how marketers are doing it. All right, the first trend is one that we are all familiar with, and that is to evolve to meet the needs of the post-COVID consumers. The good news is consumers definitely want to travel. And we've all seen the industry experience this unleashing of pent-up travel demand at different times and in different ways around the world. But consumers' needs regarding where they travel and how they travel has undoubtedly changed post-COVID, and it continues to evolve. The biggest change, of course, is due to the various border restrictions, which has caused consumers to embrace domestic travel. And this is true for all countries around the world, from US to Vietnam and basically everything in between. And marketers are adjusting their message accordingly. In this ad, for example, Azira is promoting exclusive packages to Vietnamese nationals and residents. For some consumers, domestic travel meant staying super close to home via staycation, and marketers in destinations like Napa Valley use messaging to target those locals. Other travelers, however, sought out experiences in remote destinations that enable social distancing. And to support this, you often saw images with beautiful scenery of spacious resorts like this ad in Costa Rica, and Liz showed some examples of this as well. Now, what our data indicates is that US travelers who previously would have vacationed in Europe and Asia began discovering destinations that are still adventurous but easy to get to, like Puerto Rico and Mexico. And of course, the data also shows a high increase in road trips. And as a result, you see lots of ads like this one from Valencia Hotels Group, who targeted travelers within a 500-mile radius by showing road trip imagery. Now, with all of that said, consumers have been experiencing a bit of whiplash over the last year as COVID ebbs and flows. And to be frank, so have all of us travel marketers. And this shows up in the data that we are seeing around the booking window. So during the early stage of the pandemic, consumers, of course, were afraid to plan in advance, given all the uncertainty about the future. And as a result, booking lead times dramatically shrank, and you mostly saw last-minute bookings. Then, when vaccines rolled out, booking lead times increased as customers had more certainty about their personal safety, and they felt confident that they would actually get to their destination and have fun when they got there. Now, hotels and airlines really helped by producing this sense of security by offering flexible cancellation policies, by highlighting cleanliness, and by making it easy to find that information as it was front and center on their websites. But things, of course, are never constant in these COVID times. And with the Delta variant, as you saw in Liz's presentation, there's been another decrease in the booking window and some increases in cancellations as things have slowed down just a bit. Okay, so this leads me to my 3 quick tips on addressing the needs of the post-COVID traveler. 1, it's important for marketers to provide compassionate and clear communications, and be sure to stay in touch with consumer sentiment as your message will need to adjust. 2, continue to reinforce your health and safety message, as well as flexibility. This will further reassure travelers and give them confidence to book. And 3, provide a consumer-first, people-centric approach. Understand travelers at a granular level and the purpose for their trip. Okay, trend number 2, change strategies to meet changing privacy rules. Now, this one is a bit complicated, so let me break it down just a bit. As we are all well aware, one of the biggest changes on the horizon related to privacy that will have a major impact on the travel advertising landscape comes from Google, who will begin blocking the use of third-party cookies now in 2023. And as a reminder, third-party cookies are basically the advertising tags marketers use to track consumer behavior across the web. So a whopping 64% of global web users are on Google Chrome. So this change will be disruptive if you don't prepare for it, and your campaign performance and direct booking revenue could take a hit. There is, of course, an upside to this change. As third-party cookies disappear, savvy advertisers, like I'm sure all of you, are leveraging first-party data to market to people instead of marketing to cookies. And this is ultimately going to result in better, more personalized marketing experiences. But to do so, you're going to need a robust first-party data set, which is the data that you collect directly from customers. Now, gathering this rich data is not rocket science, guys. In fact, the best way to do this is to leverage your existing customer touchpoints, which also allows you to connect with customers on their own terms. So let me walk you through 4 tips that focus on key touchpoints that marketers are leaning into. Tip number 1, activate your loyalty program. By offering valuable perks and benefits that appeal to customers, such as meaningful discounts or free upgrades or services, you can incentivize customers to become members, and in exchange, they'll provide you with their email. Now, over time, you can learn about them and provide more relevant, impactful marketing. Tip number 2, focus on your website experience. So once you've spent the dollars driving consumers to your website, you need to make it super easy for consumers to find the best possible deal by providing a seamless, intuitive, mobile-friendly experience. Think Amazon, guys. So I'm guilty of this. I buy way too much on Amazon because the interface is super easy. Swipe and I'm done. So on top of making it easy, it's also a great idea to offer benefits or bonuses for those direct bookings, like a low price guarantee. And this will help convince consumers to stop shopping around and just book direct. Okay, tip number 3, provide a contactless process. So once you've convinced someone to book with you, you also need to provide a smooth digital experience for that post-booking activity. So think check-in, check-out, different requests that they might have during their stay or during their activity experience. With the right technology, travel advertisers can turn those touch points into data points. And from that, you can personalize the experience as well as upsell or cross-sell various relevant value adds. And finally, this takes me to tip number 4, listen to customer feedback. All right, we all know consumers are particularly comfortable expressing their opinions these days on social media and review sites. These are hubs for honest feedback, and it's an opportunity to yet again gather additional data and insights. To that means travel advertisers should implement social listening tools and be sure to reach out to customers and take action to address their concerns. Be timely, respond within 24 hours. Think of yourself if you're on the other end. You want to know that somebody is listening and responding. And 3, express empathy, reinforce that they are valued customers. All right, trend number 3. Now this is a fun one. Look out for digital distribution models that are shaking up ad strategies. The first disruption has to do with a newfound appreciation for direct bookings. Now, in previous industry downturns that occurred after 9/11 or the economic crisis in 2008, which many of us have lived through both of those, many travel brands that time turned to OTAs to help them recover. What's different with the COVID pandemic recovery is 2 things. First, brands are more digitally savvy than they were back then, and they are working with travel marketing data partners like Sojern to reach consumers with high travel intent. And secondly, consumers have lots of questions this time about safety protocols, and that is driving them to go directly to travel marketers' websites instead of going to an OTA. And of course, smart marketers are using this as an opportunity to drive direct booking strategies. Palace Resorts, for example, advised that 3 years ago, about 60 to 70% of their business came from OTAs, with 30 to 40% from direct channels. And today, those trends have flipped. A newer model that is growing in popularity is the direct-to-consumer subscription model. Now, this model was made popular in other industries with the likes of Spotify for music or Netflix for digital TV. This one cracks me up. We're even seeing tacos get into the subscription game. Taco Bell is offering 30 days of free tacos for a monthly subscription. I don't know about you, but that's a little bit too much tacos for me. But these are all examples where the consumers use the product on a frequent and sometimes even daily basis. Now, subscription models in travel, however, could be a bit tricky. Companies like Inspirato and TripAdvisor are offering subscriptions to travelers that provide special deals or perks for a recurring monthly or an annual payment. And in exchange, the travel brands definitely benefit. So they gain a greater understanding of their customers' evolving and changing needs. And let's be frank, they gain an ongoing source of revenue and that reduces the cost of future advertising needed for customer reacquisition. But given the consumer typically only travels a few times a year, brands really need to show enough value for consumers to actually commit to an upfront investment. So, and I suspect, TripAdvisor recently pivoted, I think it was last week, from offering a subscription, offering subscribers an exclusive discount to now offering cashback rewards. And this probably just illustrates the complexities that are going on in travel subscription. So we're still early days, more to come. Alrighty, another model that is worth calling out is meta search, which has become even more appealing as of late. The pandemic lowered the average cost for top positions on the meta search platforms like Google, Kayak, Skyscanner, Trivago, and that makes meta search an attractive and an affordable option for travel brands looking to reach consumers and see quick returns as budgets recover in 2021. In addition, interest has grown specifically for commission-based models, particularly as a marketing tool for recovery. Now, during the pandemic, many travel brands dealt with an increase in cancellations, which had a big impact on the cost and the effectiveness of your ad campaigns. So brands started to look for lower risk options like commission. Now, at Sojern, we offer a commission-based advertising program to drive direct bookings to hotels, and it has proven to be quite attractive. Commission-based advertising is a solution that requires no upfront investment, and hotels only pay once a travel stay is completed. All right, and finally, one of the hottest models that's shaking up the ad industry is connected TV and video. So if you're like me and you find yourself binging on CTV shows like Only Murders in the Building, that's my new one via Hulu, you won't be surprised to learn that $1.16 billion more was spent on programmatic CTV video ads in 2020 than in 2019, and that trend just continues. Now, in contrast to traditional linear TV, the digital nature of CTV and video allows for more advanced custom targeting of audiences, as well as more one-to-one and one-to-many targeting models. This all boosts your campaign efficiency while lowering costs. So if you haven't started testing out the benefits of connected TV advertising, I highly recommend that you do so. That takes me to trend number 4. Evaluate your measurement strategies in a post-COVID world. Now, decisions are still data-driven in 2021, but that data has changed, and advertisers' assessment of that data has changed too. So some advertisers are adjusting what they measure, while others are adjusting how they measure it. In particular, advertisers are rethinking their success metrics around conversion, clicks, and return on ad spend. So let's take the measurement of tracking conversions as an example. As consumers become more diverse in the channels and the devices that they use during their travel booking journey, brands too have had to up their game and are now attempting to track conversions using a more integrated cross-channel approach, which is great. Similarly, marketers are experimenting with branding and awareness across multiple channels. CTV ads, for example, give travel brands the ability to target top of the advertising funnel. And since these viewers are logged into their streaming device, a destination marketer can offer relevant CTV ads to viewers based on that viewer's previous logged in travel, shopping, and booking behavior. Now, this in turn introduces a whole new category of metrics. One other example of a metric that is increasing in importance to destination marketers is mobile tracking. In this example, it illustrates a user who flew to Florida, and based on their mobile device, we can tell a few things about them. We can tell they picked up a rental car, they stayed at 2 different locations, Clearwater and St. Petersburg, and they also enjoyed several different activities while they were there. They went to the beaches, they went to botanical gardens, they golfed, and did a couple other things. So validating where people are stopping during their trip not only helps measure current marketing spend, but that data can be leveraged to further improve for future marketing spend as well. All right, trend number 5. This one is all about collaboration, particularly in the destination marketing space. So post-pandemic, travel and hospitality companies that were oriented around a single destination who used to compete for that same pool of consumers have recognized that their collective efforts can actually serve the greater good. That shared drive for survival and recovery has led to cooperative marketing campaigns that are designed to drive incremental visits as a means to jumpstart local economies. Now, destination marketing organizations are leading these efforts. By working with local attractions, hotels, and airlines, not only can they pool their limited resource, but by taking a digital-first approach and leveraging sophisticated measurement tools like Sojern's co-op platform, DMOs can show the overall macro level impact and also show that as each category succeeds, other category metrics will also be lifted. So I'm going to show you a sample report of a Sojern customer. And here we were working with a CVB who successfully ran a co-op to support 17 different hotels and attractions around the state. And they were able to show strong key performance metrics, which included the number of travelers the campaign drove, the number of hotel room nights, the average spend per traveler, the total spend overall, and the resulting ROAS, which in this instance was 52 to 1. All right, and finally, we turn to our last trend, number 6. So the backdrop here is that there were crucial society issues that all gained attention while the world reeled from the impact of COVID. And that included social justice, gender and racial equality, and climate change. And that's just naming a few. For travelers and the travel industry in particular, the issue of sustainability really became a focus for the future. When we all took a pause from the daily commute, we saw nature respond positively and people noticed. In fact, 53% of global travelers reported that the pandemic opened their eyes to humans' impact on the environment, leading them to want to travel more sustainably. Now, to do so, consumers want to know how companies are addressing these issues. To meet the increasing consumer demand for transparent, ethical commitments, travel brands will need to craft messaging that communicates who they are and what they care about. But beyond messaging, travel brands will need to show through their action how they are implementing these commitments. Now, whether that be aligning with already established organizations that promote global change, or whether they champion the change in their own way. The important step is to take real action. Not only will it resonate with consumers, but it will further help sustain our beloved travel industry and ensure that future travelers can experience the wonders of travel in your destinations. So on that note, I want to thank you guys. I'm going to turn it back over to Christy so we can dig into some of the questions that have been coming in.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those examples. We are going to be sure to share this deck out later too, so you can really read through some of the things that we saw our customers doing and some tips that you can activate as well for your creative ads, as we've seen some really good success with them. And the last thing I'll note is if you want some more viewpoints from several other experts in travel, you are in luck because, as I mentioned, we have this very meaty report that you can download. Skift has it on their website. You'll see the link there. You can find it on our website, or easiest of all, we are going to send that link to you in a follow-up email so you can download it directly from there. So with that, let's get over to the questions piece. If you don't hear back from us on a question today, because we've got quite a few, we will follow up directly. But a couple of these look like they're for Liz, so I'll give Noreen a little bit of breathing room and catch your feedback if I feel like you got something interesting to add here. But so the first thing is, Liz, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but we've heard that you've done a ton of updates to the messaging for Discover Puerto Rico. Obviously, it's been very volatile over the last few years for your island, and that you even launched a brand new website since the pandemic began, which is huge, and we heard it's top notch. So can you share a little bit about that and what's been most effective for you messaging wise?
Of course. Well, thank you. We're super proud of our website, discoverpuertorico.com. I jokingly say that it's my second born child. We built the initial phases of the website, which launched in 2019 in about 90 business days. So it was very aggressive approach, but super pleased with it. Obviously, we knew it was very important to have a functional and useful website to be able to communicate with travelers. So for us, the way we view our website is sort of the welcome mat to consumers to introduce them to Puerto Rico. And so obviously with the onset of the pandemic, it was a priority for us to make sure that we were communicating effectively to future travelers, the state of the island at the time. So obviously there was lots of changes and turmoil, and literally protocols were changing every single day. And so wanted to make sure that we were staying on top of that we were sort of a one-stop shop to where they could get all of their information that they needed to know about traveling to Puerto Rico in one place. And so we used a personalization tool where we were able to implement banners and fly-ins strategically throughout the site to get those protocols front and center as early as possible whenever people were visiting the site. And then addition to the, the fly-ins and the integration we had on the website, obviously it was important that we integrated that messaging throughout all of our communication. So through all of our earned media, communications with our media partners and our social media channels, literally every single post had a link to the protocols to educate people on what was happening on the island, as well as our newsletter program. And all of this still happens even to this day. If you go and you visit our website now, that information is still there because it's still important. Same thing with our social media channels and same with our newsletter program.
Hey, Christy, I just want to do a plug for Liz on that. If you haven't checked out Liz's website, please do so. Like, it looks terrific. I was looking at it again this morning. It's still very enticing for people to want to travel, but the information is really easy to access to know what to expect. So really nice.
Thank you, Noreen.
And just 90 days for phase one. That's wild. Website is
wild.
That's awesome. Congratulations on getting that launched so quickly. So another trend that was mentioned in the report, Noreen just talked about it, was around mobile tracking for destinations. So if at all, has this become a priority for you? And then if so, how have you activated it for Discover Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so mobile tracking is actually a really important measurement for us in Puerto Rico. So in addition to looking, at media booking data, it's one of our most important KPIs. So as an organization, one of our main objectives is to disperse travelers outside of Metro San Juan. So Puerto Rico is an entire island that we want people to enjoy and not just come and stay in the one major metro municipality. And so using this mobile tracking, we are able to track location data to see what media placements is actually inspiring visitation outside of San Juan, where they're going, what creative converted people to visit municipalities outside of San Juan. So really, really important from just tracking the actual disbursement as well as effectiveness of the media placements that we have as well.
Yeah, I think spot on from what we've heard talking to other destinations too. So going back to the cookieless world, we know that's on travel marketers' minds everywhere, despite the fact that it's been pushed back a little bit. Marketing to people instead of cookies is still going to be really increasingly important. And I'm going to quote an expert who happens to be Liz herself. You said in the report, the onus is on us as organizations to figure out how we develop more of our own first-party data so that we can be reaching those audiences. Whoever figures out what that looks like is going to be a rock star. It's for sure on our radar. So on the heels of that awesome quote, what can travel marketers do now to start collecting that data efficiently?
Yeah, I think it's just a mindset shift. And it's something that we've done internally as an organization is when, we're looking at our marketing strategies, instead of just looking at, okay, are we mass reaching all of these people? Now we're thinking about, okay, how are we going to gather information about these people that we can maintain and use in the future? And so even down to like our partnership collaborations, for example, we did a partnership this past summer with Advanced Auto Parts, which was during their summer road trip activation, which worked really nicely with our sort of fly and then drive around the island goal. And so just by doing that partnership, we garnered over 80,000 new subscribers, and that was just by a single like, hey, can we add in an opt-in on the registration page for you? And they were like, yeah, sure. And so just making sure that as you're thinking about your marketing strategies, you're layering in those tactics to make sure that you're garnering those first-party leads and data that we can use for that. And then I think additionally, on top of just gathering sort of email addresses and things like that, we're looking at how can we gather more information about those people. And so, we've re-optimized some of our forms and lead generation thing to where we're getting more information about what they're interested in, the type of travel that they're looking for, in addition to, their just general geographic, demographic sort of information. And so just, I'd say keep that in the forefront of your mind as you're thinking about your marketing strategies of how can you just layer on those additional tactics. It doesn't have to be a huge sweeping change, but just adding in those little steps, it adds up over time.
Advanced.
I think Liz is clearly channeling her inner rock star. All right. Like, consumers really like to feel empowered with choice. So I love that, simply adding that opt-in on the registration page resulted in, had a great impact for you guys. I think brands that jump in and really start testing simple, creative tactics like this are really going to be ahead of the game, because you got to figure out what's going to work and what's not. And so I think, the sooner you start testing things, the better you're going to be. Christy, one other tool that we see going on out there is enabling site visitors to easily log in by leveraging, Google login or Facebook login. Those things continue to make it frictionless so that you're able to capture that user.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we've got plenty of cookieless info on our website too, if you need extra references. So I want to ask this to both Liz and Noreen, but Liz, I'll start with you. You did mention this briefly, the sustainability piece in your presentation, which is awesome that you're already thinking about that on the island. So can you touch a little bit more on what you're doing, and then even in your messaging to encourage customers to be more sustainable when they come and visit?
Yeah, so sustainability has just inherently been part of the strategy and the DNA of our island. So obviously, with a large emphasis on our outdoor product offering, this has been important for quite some time. So for us, sustainability is really baked into not only just our product, but the type of people that we want to bring to the island. So we want people to come to Puerto Rico that are going to respect, the outdoor products. And we always say, like, leave it as you found it, is sort of the messaging that we use. And so, during the height of the pandemic, we were targeting those responsible travelers. People that purchase hand sanitizer and, were left leaning and they were more likely to wear masks. And so as we've moved away from that and, the pandemic has sort of transitioned, I guess, or we've just sort of adapted to this new normal of the world that we live in, we transitioned to this conscientious traveler. So somebody that prioritizes wellness within their own self is probably more likely to prioritize wellness in the nature and the destination wherever they visit. And so this is really just supported again with our organization's mission to disperse visitation around the island. So, not overcrowding San Juan, but making sure that we're getting people out into the rest of the island as well.
Yeah, I heard something interesting in the Skift Global Forum. The CEO of Airbnb, he said, I don't consider it so much over tourism as too many people going to one place. So I like that you're thinking about the disbursement for sure. Noreen, have you seen anything from the Sojern side that's interested you in terms of sustainability?
Part of what we see, first of all, I love, Liz, how you're targeting your messaging to the right people that are going to respect sustainability, and I think that's important. But I think the other thing that we see, particularly from DMOs, that they're leading this across their region. So you need to get all the stakeholders involved, from the business to the local residents, to really buy into what you're trying to accomplish, so that you have an overall vision. And that helps lay out your roadmap so that when you are messaging and you are targeting, everybody's aligned.
Yep, I think that's spot on. All right, so a little bit of a hot button question here that I think a lot of destinations are dealing with, experiencing potential backlash from residents that don't want to see a big influx of visitors during a pandemic. So are you experiencing that on the island, and what do you recommend to folks that are listening to do in a situation like that?
Yeah, so we were certainly in this boat, I think, with many others, especially when travel started to pick back up. And for us, again, really the approach was on using targeting to make sure that we were bringing the right people to the island, that were educated, that they were willing to follow the protocols. That was really what our main focus and job was. And then really what we had to do is then make sure that this strategy was communicated to our local stakeholders so they knew that we were trying to proactively make sure that we were bringing the right people to the island. Additionally, we collaborated with the Puerto Rico Tourism Company and Aerostar, which is our airport, to create campaigns to remind travelers whenever they arrived in the island what was expected of them. And so this is called the Return the Love campaign, which also had a nice tie to sustainability as well as the health and safety protocols that we were able to activate on the island once travelers actually arrived.
Anything to add on to that, Noreen, that you've caught just from talking to customers?
Yeah, well, when you think about this, you really need to make sure that everyone from travelers to local residents are understanding what tourism means. And when you think about tourism's impact to local economies, they drive a significant amount. So from revenue to jobs. So I think the stats are 1 in every 10 jobs on the planet is tourism related. And in the last 5 years, it was 1 in every 5 new jobs was tourism related. So local residents are dependent upon tourism to help them and help their economy. So I think it's important to help balance that and make sure you include all of that in your messaging.
Awesome. So, all right, I think I'm going to ask one more question, and we'll give folks a few minutes back, but I think this is a really good one to end on and something that's on everyone's mind, because if you can believe it, it is already almost 2022, which is just crazy. What advice can you offer to travel marketers that are listening today going into 2022? And I'll start with Noreen.
So I think you really need to be flexible. As we've seen over the last year, you've got to be able to be responsive and understand what's going on in the marketplace. And you need to know what you're buying. So digital overall gives you that flexibility to ramp up or ramp down your spend as appropriate and to change your messaging very quickly. But you also need to know who you're working with and, like I said, when I talk about what you're buying, like Sojern has data partnerships with travel sites across the globe, and we have real-time travel intent. But there's no shortage of data out there, so make sure when you're working with partners, you understand what that data is, and that it's really focusing on the types of users that you are looking for and driving the right business for you.
What do you think, Liz?
I would say, again, just find ways to prioritize and integrate that first party data. Little tiny changes can go a long way, and just be prepared to innovate and look for opportunities of collaboration. I will say some of our most successful moments were, partnerships that were not the most expected or even the most obvious sort of collaborations and tie-ins. So just keep your eyes open, be open, to collaborating with other businesses, because, we know a rising tide lifts all boats, and just maintain that agility and nimbleness, that we've all had to learn and sort of adapt to. It's not a set it and forget it sort of media plan or media strategy or messaging or approach anymore. Be agile and flexible, and I think you'll be successful.
I love it. The advanced auto parts. Have you ever done a partnership like that, or was that totally creative new idea?
That was a random new idea, and we've definitely done lots of partnerships and collaborations, all which seemed pretty expected, like normal, nature, things that seemed like a very easy tie-in. But when Advanced Auto Parts, they obviously have a large activation within Puerto Rico itself, lots of stores, and so when they brought that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, of course, with our fly then drive sort of approach. But originally, I was like, a road trip, like we're an island, like you can't get to us from, the mainland U.S. But it ended up working out really well because it aligned with one of our goals and objectives, and it was an easy lift. There wasn't a ton of work that we had to do as part of the collaboration, and then was super successful. So yeah, don't always just turn it down because it's not as obvious at the beginning.
It's great. That's awesome.
It's creative, and it's an opportunity to test and learn. Like
exactly.
test these, figure out pretty quickly what's going to work, what's not going to work, And just it creates those opportunities.
Love it. Well, it has been an honor to listen to two awesome women in travel tell us all about their experiences and give us great tips and tricks. Shameless plug, as Liz said, the website is your welcome mat. And we actually are going to be putting on a webinar. The next one you'll see coming from us is going to be some tips to really optimize your website and drive those conversions. So stay tuned for that. Thank you again so much to our participants. Liz and Noreen, you've been fantastic. I hope you walk away with some excellent tips you can action on. And thanks so much for attending today. Best of luck to everybody in their recovery.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining today. Liz.